African medicine versus the World Health Organization 2025 Pandemic Treaty. Signed by 124 nations. There were 12 nations that abstained. Abstentions were received from Bulgaria, Egypt, Italy, Iran, Israel, and the island of Jamaica. Abstentions also from the Netherlands, Paraguay, Poland, Russia, Slovakia, and United States of America. Traditional African medicine versus the World Health Organization 2025 Pandemic Treaty. Its key provisions include equitable access to health products. Countries must ensure fair distribution of pandemic-related health tools such as vaccines. 20% of such products must be allocated to the WHO for global public health needs. Pathogen access and benefit sharing or PABS systems. Nations agree to share genetic data or pathogen quickly and transparently. In return, they gain fair access to vaccine, treatments and diagnostic development from that data. Strengthen global coordination. Countries commit to timely reporting and data sharing during health threats. Who will act as a central hub for pandemic intelligence and coordination? Support for low and middle income countries. High income nations must assist low income nations with funding, supplies and training. This includes building lab capacity and healthcare infrastructure. Pandemic preparedness reviews. Nations must regularly evaluate and report their readiness for pandemics. Peer review mechanism will assess progress and guide improvements. Legal and ethical commitments. Countries agree to uphold human rights during public health emergencies. Measures like lockdown and surveillance must be proportionate and lawful. Ubuntu. The African philosophical imperative of Ubuntu, often encapsulated in the phrase, I am because we are. We are because I am. Articulates a profound relational worldview in which human identity, well-being and destiny are deeply interwoven with that of the broader community, the natural environment and the spiritual realm. Ubuntu is not merely a cultural idiom, it's a comprehensive philosophical, ethical and social framework that has guided African societies for centuries in understanding life, relationship, responsibilities and healing. Ubuntu offers a holistic approach to health that contrasts with Western biomedical models by emphasizing balance across physical, emotional, communal, environmental and spiritual dimensions. It sees illness not merely as a physical issue, but as a disruption of social or spiritual harmony, requiring communal restorative healing processes. Rooted in interconnectedness, Ubuntu teaches that individual well-being is inseparable from the well-being of others, demanding that public health address inequalities, exclusion, and cultural alienation. Embedded Ubuntu in the Pandemic Treaty is not just a cultural inclusion, it's a strategic and ethical imperative. It affirms African dignity and knowledge, promotes equality, supports collaborative international health governance, and values traditional healing systems. Ignoring Ubuntu risks perpetrating a fragmented and unjust global health order, whilst embracing it offers a path to a more humane, inclusive, sustainable future. Traditional African medicine versus the World Health Organization 2025 Pandemic Treaty. We need to translate our words into action because success is ours for the taking. Traditional African medicine versus the World Health Organization 2025 Pandemic Treaty. Signed by 124 nations. There were 12 nations that abstained. Abstentions were received from Bulgaria, Egypt, Italy, Iran, Israel, and the island of Jamaica. Abstentions also from the Netherlands, Paraguay, Poland, Russia, Slovakia, and United States of America. Traditional African medicine versus the World Health Organization 2025 Pandemic Treaty. Its key provisions include equitable access to health products. Countries must ensure fair distribution of pandemic-related health tools such as vaccines. 20% of such products must be allocated to the WHO for global public health needs. Pathogen access and benefit sharing or PABS systems. Nations agree to share genetic data or pathogen quickly and transparently. In return, they gain fair access to vaccine, treatments and diagnostic development from that data. Strengthen global coordination. Countries commit to timely reporting and data sharing during health threats. WHO will act as a central hub for pandemic intelligence and coordination. Support for low and middle-income countries. High-income nations must assist low-income nations with funding, supplies and training. This includes building lab capacity and healthcare infrastructure. Pandemic preparedness reviews. Nations must regularly evaluate and report their readiness for pandemics. Peer review mechanism will assess progress and guide improvements. Legal and ethical commitments. Countries agree to uphold human rights during public health emergencies. Measures like lockdown and surveillance must be proportionate and lawful. Ubuntu. The African philosophical imperative of Ubuntu, often encapsulated in the phrase, I am because we are. We are because I am. Articulates a profound relational worldview in which human identity, well-being and destiny are deeply interwoven with that of the broader community, the natural environment and the spiritual realm. Ubuntu is not merely a cultural idiom, it's a comprehensive philosophical, ethical and social framework that has guided African societies for centuries in understanding life, relationship, responsibilities and healing. Ubuntu offers a holistic approach to health that contrasts with Western biomedical models by emphasizing balance across physical, emotional, communal, environmental and spiritual dimensions. It sees illness not merely as a physical issue, but as a disruption of social or spiritual harmony, requiring communal restorative healing processes. Rooted in interconnectedness, Ubuntu teaches that individual well-being is inseparable from the well-being of others, demanding that public health address inequalities, exclusion, and cultural alienation. embedded Ubuntu in the pandemic treaty is not just a cultural inclusion, it's a strategic and ethical imperative. It affirms African dignity and knowledge, promotes equality, supports collaborative international health governance, and values traditional healing systems. Ignoring Ubuntu risks perpetrating a fragmented and unjust global health order, whilst embracing it offers a path to a more humane, inclusive, sustainable future. Traditional African medicine versus the World Health Organization 2025 Pandemic Treaty. We need to translate our words into action because success is ours for the taking. Traditional African medicine versus the World Health Organization 2025 Pandemic Treaty. Signed by 124 nations. There were 12 nations that abstained. Abstentions were received from Bulgaria, Egypt, Italy, Iran, Israel, and the island of Jamaica. Abstentions also from the Netherlands, Paraguay, Poland, Russia, Slovakia, and United States of America. Traditional African medicine versus the World Health Organization 2025 Pandemic Treaty. Its key provisions include equitable access to health products. Countries must ensure fair distribution of pandemic-related health tools such as vaccines. 20% of such products must be allocated to the WHO for global public health needs. Pathogen access and benefit sharing of PABS systems. Nations agree to share genetic data of pathogen quickly and transparently. In return, they gain fair access to vaccine, treatments, and diagnostic development from that data. Strengthen global coordination. Countries commit to timely reporting and data sharing during health threats. WHO will act as a central hub for pandemic intelligence and coordination. Support for low and middle-income countries. High-income nations must assist low-income nations with funding, supplies, and training. This includes building lab capacity and healthcare infrastructure. Pandemic preparedness reviews. Nations must regularly evaluate and report their readiness for pandemics. Peer review mechanism will assess progress and guide improvements. Legal and ethical commitments. Countries agree to uphold human rights during public health emergencies. Measures like lockdown and surveillance must be proportionate and lawful. Ubuntu. The African philosophical imperative of Ubuntu often encapsulates in the phrase, I am because we are. We are because I am. Articulates a profound relational worldview in which human identity, well-being, and destiny are deeply interwoven with that of the broader community, the natural environment, and the spiritual realm. Ubuntu is not merely a cultural idiom, it's a comprehensive philosophical, ethical, and social framework that has guided African societies for centuries in understanding life, relationship, responsibilities, and healing. Ubuntu offers a holistic approach to health that contrasts with Western biomedical models by emphasizing balance across physical, emotional, communal, environmental, and spiritual dimensions. It sees illness not merely as a physical issue, but as a disruption of social or spiritual harmony, requiring communal restorative healing processes. Rooted in interconnectedness, Ubuntu teaches that individual well-being is inseparable from the well-being of others, demanding that public health address inequalities, exclusion, and cultural alienation. Embedded Ubuntu in the pandemic treaty is not just a cultural inclusion, it's a strategic and ethical imperative. It affirms African dignity and knowledge, promotes equality, supports collaborative international health governance, and values traditional healing systems. Ignoring Ubuntu risks perpetrating a fragmented and unjust global health order, whilst embracing it offers a path to a more humane, inclusive, sustainable future. Traditional African medicine versus the World Health Organization 2025 Pandemic Treaty. We need to translate our words into action because success is ours for the taking. Success is ours for the taking. This is the motivator here. This is where we translate our words into action and where success is ours for the taking. Yes, you hear it authoritatively from me directly. Hope you believe it. Yep, that's the premise of these podcasts. Success is ours for the taking. It's very much a mindset. We are lions. We've been caged. The cage door no longer exists. We can now walk freely. We can assert our authority over the land. We can assert our authority over the environment. We can assert our authority over our communities. Praise Jah, Rastafari. And yes, success is ours for the taking. How are you feeling, people? How are you feeling? I'm feeling alive. I'm feeling thrilled. I'm feeling hyper. Yeah. I've met over these past few days a remarkable, some truly inspirational people who continue to lift us all up and affirm why these podcasts are absolutely crucial in defining the time of day. Yep. The worldview that is arising. I want to give a big praise to the people of Burkina Faso and salute and assert affiliation and support for His Excellency President Ibrahim Traoré. Long may your great works continue. You have truly inspired not simply your own country, but the entire continent. No, not just the continent of Africa. You've inspired the entire African diaspora. Yes, yes, yes. Now, but today's show will be truly inspirational. We're going to tackle a subject which we haven't had the opportunity to tackle for a little while, and that's the question of the United Nations, the AU, and a treaty that was only approved a few days ago, which is the 2025 Pandemic Treaty, which has a series of provisions in it that we need to discuss. Because ultimately, in order for that treaty to become enforced, okay, I understand that 60 countries must enshrine that treaty into their national laws. Okay, it is important for the world, the ordinary man or woman on the street, to discuss the implication of this treaty. Because whilst it has most certainly some truly groundbreaking provisions in it, okay, there are discussions that we need to have. Ordinary men and women, not the elite who can isolate themselves and receive the best possible medical care. I refer to ordinary men and women, okay, who work hard for their families, who work hard for their communities, for their societies. That's the group of people, in other words, the overwhelming majority, that's 95+% of the world population. That's who this particular podcast is directed at. Yes, we're taking it from an African perspective, but as those of you with other ethnicities will also appreciate that if these are lessons and observations that Africans are making, you yourselves need to make similar observations within your cultural context. Very important. It's vitally important that we get this right, because it will have serious implications for us all. But that will be in approximately 40 minutes, okay? Approximately 40 minutes. We'll have our special guest here, and we'll have a tremendous, inspiring dialogue. And I know you will enjoy it. I know you will enjoy it. But until now and then, what we've got to do is just go through a series of quick announcements. So before I begin, I want to give a big thumbs up to those of the Rastafari community worldwide. Rastafari, of course, is a way of life, a recognition of the African-centeredness of people, both in Africa, obviously, but also in the diaspora. Okay, they are an important part of the international community. And what they have demonstrated is that they have never lost, never forgotten their African roots. Their roots is embedded. So it is very much a way of life. And it's been a source of inspiration for leaders, both in the diaspora and, of course, on the continent of Africa. Long may you continue, the people who are followers, the adherents of Rastafari, that way of life. Long may you continue. Praise Jah, Rastafari. I give praise to Priest Forrester, that inspired African. You could hear his tone, you could hear his voice, you could hear the wisdom, the inspiration that wisdom sprout amongst us all. Thank you for your wise words. We're getting back again, and other members of the Rastafari, international Rastafari communities, because they're a community we must have dialogue with. So well done. Thumbs up to them. Thumbs up to them. Thumbs up to them. Yes, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good. I also want to give another quick announcement, of course, a more recent guest here. Now, some of you will remember our discussion about another treaty that's been put together and for which signatories are being sought. Okay, I'm going to put it on the screen. If I can put it on the screen very quickly for you, and I know you will all appreciate what I'm about to say. Okay, this is, of course, the Pan-African Treaty of the Sixth Region African Diaspora. Okay, this particular treaty seeks to unite Africans of the diaspora within the sixth region. In other words, that's the region outside of Africa. It recognizes that if we were able to speak with one voice, it recognizes that if we were able to speak with a thoughtful, united, coherent voice, even the countries of Africa can hear our voices. And the voices is clear. And the voices are clear. The voices are clear that there's a strong desire to have stronger links, clear links between the diaspora and, of course, the continent of Africa through the AU, okay, and ECOSOC, which will organize election later this year to encourage representatives from the diaspora to get involved in the operations of the African Union. It will be a tremendous step forward. I look forward to it. I absolutely look forward. So, If you wish to see the treaty, because you could be an individual and you could sign up to it, you could be an organization, you could sign up to it. But what it will do is bring you a part of the wider African diaspora and therefore be a party to organizing, raising resources and being able to have a seat around the table where decisions are taken. So seek out a copy of the treaty. You can make a request using the following email address, which is the Pan-African Treaty Diaspora. No, without the A at the end. Pan-African Treaty Diaspora at gmail.com. I commend this initiative to you. It is an absolutely important initiative, one that is long overdue. Long may this initiative and similar initiatives continue unabated. Well done, you all. Well done, you all. There you are. That's that announcement. And one more announcement I wish to make, just so that we're all on the same page on this one. Because obviously, in order for us to move forward with a conviction and intention, it is important for us to think about those other struggles which are underway. And I want to refer to the struggle in Namibia. You recall we had here the paramount chief. You recall we had here the paramount chief of the Herero people in Namibia. I'm going to put his details here on the screen for you. There you are. You recall we had him here. He was able to really relate to us all the horrors caused by the German people, the genocide committed against the Herero people. Okay, a genocide, the first genocide of the 20th century. Okay, and of course, the Herero people, indeed, the new president of Namibia is calling for appropriate reparations. Can you imagine losing 80%, forgive me, more than 80% of your community? Can you imagine that happening to you? Can you imagine the implication that means for you? Yeah, the damage that is caused to the Herero people. And they're demanding appropriate reparations. Let's get behind them. Let's support them. Let's show them our conviction, our kinship with them. Let it be clear that no nation should commit this type of genocide and be allowed to walk away scot-free. Okay? And then continue to benefit from that genocide. That is immoral. I say to the Chancellor of Germany, pay just reparations. Pay just reparations to the Herero people. Later on, during the revised and edited version of this podcast, you'll see all the details on your screen. But I just want to close this quick announcement section by saying this to you. In order to move forward with conviction, I wish you to note the words of the late Samuel Michel. Okay, I'll put up on the screen for you. And he said this: of all the things we have done, the most important, the one that history will record as the principal contribution of our generation, is that we understand how to turn an armed struggle into a revolution. That we realize that it was essential to create a new mentality to build a new society. A new mentality to build a new society. I hope that resonates with you. I hope you understand the implication of those words. Adaptation, taking your evolution, social evolution to the next step requires an adaptation of your mentality. This is why the Motivator Show exists. This is where we translate our words into action and where success is ours for the taking. In unity is strength. I say again, in unity is strength. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Be fired up, people. Be fired up. The future is yours for the taking. Yeah, it's for you to shape. It's your responsibility to hand a suitable future over to our children, indeed to our children's children. Praise Jah, Rastafari. Yes, that's the way of life. That is the way of life. All righty. So those are my initial announcements. Now, the all-important lifestyle messages. These are important because they get to a profound aspect of who we are as human beings. How we live our lives has a strong determinant on the quality of our lives. And the quality of our lives is determined by our health condition. Our health condition is determined by our behavior in our lives. That's what's important. So these messages are intended to share with you an idea that we can improve the quality of our lives by ensuring good health. So I want you, in this particular clip, I want you to pay attention to what the professor says. Not what I say, but what the professor says. And these messages are straightforward, common sense. It's the messages that I know you've heard before. I know some of you have heard before. But we need to incorporate these messages into our lifestyle, into the way in which we live our lives. Because your life is not just for you, it's for your family, it's for your friends, it's for your network, it's for your wider community. You are an important cog in that big wheel. Let's go. Listen to what the professor says. The Motivator Show. The internet's most inspirational podcast. Every Saturday morning from 8 to 10 a.m. I choose a healthy lifestyle. I will relax and when possible attend a spa. I will eat healthy food and drink appropriate amount of water each day. I will exercise and maintain fitness. I will not be afraid of doctors and seek out medical examination when I need it. I will promote good mental health because it's important to me. I deserve to be happy. London is United Kingdom's capital city. It is amongst the most cosmopolitan in the world. It possesses all possible extremes, including in wealth, cultural and religious diversities. The main causes of illness and premature death in London, like the rest of the United Kingdom, are coronary heart disease, strokes, cancers, and respiratory diseases. Other key health challenges in London include tuberculosis, issues relating to sexual health, including HIV/AIDS, mental health, and drug and alcohol misuse. It is likely that these issues and diabetes and obesity will continue to be priorities over the next 10 years. As London's diverse population increases, there's also likely to be an increase in diseases which are more prevalent in some Black and ethnic minority communities, such as high blood pressure and renal diseases. I choose a healthy lifestyle. I will relax and when possible attend a spa. I will eat healthy food and drink appropriate amount of water each day. I will exercise and maintain fitness. I will not be afraid of doctors and seek out medical examination when I need it. I will promote good mental health because it's important to me. I deserve to be happy. London currently has high levels of health inequalities with unacceptable variations in infant mortality and life expectancy across the capital. Tackling these issues is likely to remain a key challenge over the next 10 years. London is United Kingdom's capital city. It is amongst the most cosmopolitan in the world. It possesses all possible extremes, including in wealth, cultural and religious diversities. The causes of health inequalities are similar to those that determine health in general, including, for example, housing conditions, employment opportunities, environmental factors such as pollution, the amount of exercise undertaken, one's diet and smoking, and access to health services. I choose a healthy lifestyle. I will relax and when possible attend a spa. I will eat healthy food and drink appropriate amount of water each day. I will exercise and maintain fitness. I will not be afraid of doctors and seek out medical examination when I need it. I will promote good mental health because it's important to me. I deserve to be happy. Public health priorities. Life expectancy is stalling and health inequalities are widening. After a century of increases, the decades prior to COVID-19 pandemic saw improvement in life expectancy amongst the UK population stall. For some, these improvements went into reverse. Between 2010 and 2012 and 2016 and 2018, life expectancy among women living in the most deprived 10% of areas of England fell with the largest increases in the North East. The diseases now most prevalent within the communities include diabetes, high blood pressure, heart conditions, cardiovascular diseases, lung disease, cancers, and obesity. London is United Kingdom's capital city. It is amongst the most cosmopolitan in the world. It possesses all possible extremes, including in wealth, cultural and religious diversities. Professor Kevin Fenton, CBE. Kevin Fenton is the president of the Faculty of Public Health. He's also a senior public health expert and infectious disease epidemiologist who has worked in a variety of public health executive leadership roles across government and academia in the United Kingdom and internationally. His specialist interests are in tackling health inequalities, infectious disease prevention and control, climate justice, and urban health. Professor Fenton is the Regional Director for London in the Office for Health Improvement and Disparities within the Department of Health and Social Care. Within this role, he's also the Statutory Public Health Advisor to the Mayor of London and the Greater London Authority and the Regional Director of Public Health for NHS London. He is also the Government Chief Advisor on HIV and Chair of the HIV Action Plan Implementation Steering Group for England. Professor Kevin Fenton says, I'm a public health director. Here are 5 things you can do to improve your health. 1. Mindful and balanced eating. Nourish wisely. Eat whole, balanced meals with awareness to support energy and well-being. 2. Get outside. Be with nature. Time outside reduces stress, improves mood, and strengthens your connection to the world. 3. Stay curious, stay engaged, explore new interests, keep your mind sharp, build social contacts, and boost your happiness. 4. Get active, move it or lose it. Move daily, lift weight, and do cardio. Exercise, improve physical, mental, mood, and energy. 5. Prioritize rest and sleep. Disconnect, rest. Quality sleep supports mental clarity, emotional balance, and overall health. I choose a healthy lifestyle. I will relax and when possible attend a spa. I will eat healthy food and drink appropriate amount of water each day. I will exercise and maintain fitness. I will not be afraid of doctors and seek out medical examination when I need it. I will promote good mental health because it's important to me. I deserve to be happy. Traditional. You deserve to be happy. I say again, you deserve to be happy. You deserve to be healthy. Yeah? You deserve to have good mental health. You deserve to have good physical health. You deserve the best that the world can offer you. You deserve it. That's the affirmation that follows from that video. And what I'm heartened by is the numbers of you who responded positively to these messages, these lifestyle messages, and have come together in your families, have come together in your immediate communities, in your villages, in your towns, in your cities, yeah, who've come together in common aim and common purpose, recognizing your highest wealth is, of course, your physical, mental, and spiritual health, and treasuring those health paradigms as important, not money. That I would emphasize, not money. And what I'm proud to see right across Britain, people come together in common aim and common purpose and demonstrating that you can overcome religious divides, you can overcome social divide, you can overcome educational divide, you can overcome those artificial divides created by others who divide and rule, and come together in common aim and common purpose and define what is right for you. Pooling your resources, acquiring the assets so you can exercise together. If you want to go fast, if you want to go quickly, you can do it by yourself, not a problem. If you want to go far, if you want to go far and sustained, we do it together because in unity is strength. I say again, in unity is strength. And many of you know this lesson already. So I'm going to share with you an example of a group of people who responded to these messages, who've come together in common aim and common purpose, who understand why unity is strength. Watch these examples of people here in London who've come together in common aim and common purpose. There you go.
Cheese. Famous. Hello, 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 hello. Awe, 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 awe. You get one life only.
See them, they're exercising.
Why we not go use
older people, pool their resources, hire the facilities, and there he's got Ishmael at the front, guiding them through exercise routines. There's ordinary people, there's no special physique there, there's ordinary people. Recognize their health is their highest wealth. Oh, look at that, huh? Oh yes. Simple exercises, but it can be rather tiring, let's say the least. Have you done this morning? Yes? Have you exercised this morning? Yep. Have you had the appropriate amount of water today? Are you eating well? Are you encouraging good mental health? Happiness, you heard what the professor said. Oh gosh. I'll trust his words over anyone. He's devoted his life to promoting good health amongst the populace. Look at these people exercising, pull their resources. See, look, he's laughing. Oh, he's laughing, oh yeah. Yes, exercise is good. Exercise is good. Look, you even have the children there, following the parents' examples. Yeah, get them young. Get them in the habit of exercising young. I'm assuring you, it will have long-term positive implications for that child. We need more of this right across the world. When people come together in common aim and common purpose, your health is your highest wealth.
You want to eat what you want, we go down your belly, nine, you young. Get the balance where you go, die left, now all the money young. So why house where you collect bill oh. You meet top woman where you let yanam. And if you let the man na for keep am. One time more. The food where you feel for eat na for eat am. That fine la pan where you let na for buy am. Entire more. And if you baby love you back love am. But if you love them all now you na for left am. One time more. Cause nobody know waiting tomorrow all.
And they're enjoying themselves, that's for sure.
Enjoyment stay go.
It is such a powerful example of working with your neighbors. Putting your resources for a common venture.
Oh no make nobody take your peace away. Me joy away, me smile away. Oh no.
Oh yes. Wasn't that a positive example of all the people come together in common aim and common purpose? Your health is your highest wealth. Yep. Recognizing we work together, we can achieve far more than we try to do it all by ourselves. Yeah? You can only do so much. And many of you will recognize you do it all by yourself. Now, after a while, you become physically, mentally, spiritually burnt out. But if you do it together, you share the burden with others, then you are enhanced. There is no barrier. And let me just say, with regard to this particular group, if you're in London, if you're in South London, and you can get to them, why not join them in the exercise session? Why not join them and be a part of that coming together in common aim and common purpose to exercise together ensures that you're able to sustain the exercise over a long period of time. So if you're in South London, you want to visit, you want to experience communalism in action. Yep, this is where the Motivator Show, where we translate our words into action. Join them. Let me put it on the screen for you. There you go. They're, of course, the Countdown Health and Wellbeing. They meet every Monday and Wednesday between 6:30 and 8 p.m. here in London. And the address is 12 Tatum Street in London, S for sugar, E17 1TN. There you go. You can reach out to them by email. Email address is countdown0405@gmail.com. Or you can speak to the inspired brother Ishmael. And his number is UK 07960-803-588. Now, if you currently manage a similar exercise group, tell us about it. Go onto my YouTube channel, leave a note, and we'll reach out to you. We'll reach out to you so that we can promote your exercise session here on the Motivator Show. I cannot see any higher duty of us that to ensure that we take care of each other. Yeah, we think about each other. We think about each other's health, physical, mental, and spiritual health. I cannot see anything higher than that. Okay? Once you start to do that, once you are able to demonstrate humanity, I'm assuring you, even if you have political differences, you can overcome it. If you have religious doctrine differences, you can overcome it. Yeah? If you have educational, social differences, you can overcome because you're already working together in common aim and common purpose. That's how you build societies. That's how you build great civilization. In unity is strength. In unity is strength. Be aware. There are many who want to disrupt that unity, that great discord amongst the people, because they seek divide and rule. I know you see this, and many of you feel disempowered, but actually, that indeed is an illusion. You have all the power. Once you team up, you hold hands with your neighbors, and together you work to a common aim and common purpose. It's the Motivator here. This is where we translate our words into action, and where success is ours for the taking. Yes, yes, yes. Oh yeah. Okay, all righty. Okay. Now let me start to prepare for the theme for today's show. Okay. As you can see, I've got an image of Cape Town, South Africa in the background. That's because my guest is from South Africa. Okay. An inspired human being. Obviously, he's on the Motivator Show. You're all inspired. So reach out. I'll get you on. Don't you worry. But you're all inspired. Okay. There's inspiration in which you keep to yourself, and there's inspiration that you share with others and you apply it practically, and 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 your family, your network, your communities, your towns, your villages, your societies benefit. Okay. The gentleman I will have on shortly is one such person who's had international implications. Okay. But I do want to, if I may, prepare the way for him. The discussion will be on a vote that was taken very recently at the United Nations to agree the 2025 pandemic treaty. So it's been approved at the United Nations, but yet to be ratified by the individual countries who are signatories to that treaty. When I say the ratified, what I mean is it has to go to the local parliament or congresses, yeah, place where you create national laws and approved. Okay. And once approved, it becomes international law. Okay. But how many of you were aware that these discussions were underway? How many of you who were listening to this particular podcast contributed to the consultation, the dialogue over the articles contained in this treaty? How many of you have read the treaty? How many of you agree with its contents? How many of you who have read the treaty but are concerned about a supernatural agency, that is the World Health Organization, being able to impose its will on your health services? How many of you are comfortable with this? These are important questions to ask. But the more important question, if I may, and I'm going to take it, and this is purely for an example from an African perspective, because this will relate to India, to China, to Russia, and to other great ethnicities. But today we'll look at it via the lens of an African perspective. And review the articles and consider its implications for Africa. Yeah, really important. And the process that we'll undergo today will start today, I should say. Okay. We'll, of course, continue on after this podcast across the continent. I'd wish to encourage this dialogue across Asia, the Americas, and beyond. For it's important for the people to understand the implications of this treaty. I want to make it clear, though, the treaty does contain some quite interesting articles that generally common sense says we should approve. But the treaty is expensive. Okay, it's expensive. Because it does require, and it's not been too good of late, those with the greatest wealth to make a real contribution to those with less wealth and less control over the technology to share that wealth, to share the technology with those who have less. Yep. Okay. Yes, indeed. I can hear you. I heard you. We as a species are pretty strange. Yep. this species, the human species, we're pretty strange. I'm pretty sure that if an alien were to come in and observe our behavior, they would have to question our sanity. How is it possible we have a single species that dominates the planet and is capable of space travel, yet can still behave in barbaric manners, in a barbaric way, against fellow members of the same species? We're but one human race, one human species. Many ethnicities, that's true. Yep, different parts of the world. Yep, that's fine. But we're one human race, one species. We are a single genetic pool. The entire species pool is important for our long-term survival as a species, as a human race. The ethnicities are simply regional adaptations, nothing else. My pigmentation, my melanin, it's a regional adaptation. Yeah. If I spent maybe 100,000 years, my family spent 100,000 years in the Caucasus, I'd have less melanin, could be less required to protect myself from the sun's ray. Yeah, that's it. That's it. That's the difference. It's very superficial, actually. It's 0.0000001% of a single percent, which is why we're able to mate regardless of where we are on the globe, because we are a single family. So I'm sure an alien would question our sanity. But this treaty offers some hope, despite the fact that the country, United States of America, is attempting to withdraw itself from these supranational agencies that bring the whole world together so we work in common aim and common purpose. Yes, America is going through a very strange phase. But I'm sure America and Americans will wake up, that you are an integral part of the global family. And if you have great wealth, you have a responsibility to use that great wealth for the common good. Don't want to take it from you, but if you have so much wealth that you cannot spend it in your lifetimes, well, again, an alien observing this would think we consider us quite strange. Because the alien will see us as a single species. This alien will not recognize the ethnicities, yeah, because they're superficial differences. I know for some those words are astonishing. Mhm. And your ethnicity is a powerful determinant of who you are as a human being. It is true. It is true. But we still belong to a human family. We have a common ancestry, yep, that came out of Africa, yep, yep. We have a common thread, yep, throughout the world that leads to a single place. We are but one single family. And I look forward to that family working together in common aim and common purpose. But today, we want to review the 2025 Pandemic Treaty, as approved by the World Health Organization on behalf of the United Nations. Okay? I'm going to ask my guest to join us now, and I want to get this interview underway. I ask my guest to join us now. I want to get the interview underway because there's much we want to discuss. There's much knowledge to share with you, the audience. I know many of you are here because you want to hear how we review this important treaty and what are its implications. Okay, and what should we, ordinary men and women, out there, what should we do about it? Yeah, should we give it up our approval, or should we seek some moderation in some of its articles to ensure that our sovereignties are not jeopardized? Mhm. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to play the intro video for a few minutes. I'm going to help my guest to get into the studio, and then we get this dialogue underway. There we go. There we go. Oh, my guest is here. My guest has arrived. I'm going to bring him right in, I think. Let's bring him right in. There we go. If we can get him he's in the green room, and I'm going to bring him now into the live stream. And be ready for what will be an inspirational experience. Here we go. Oh, success first time, I believe. Good morning, sir. Can you hear us?
Hey, good morning, my brother. How you doing?
I am so well. It's good to see your face again. And your inspired persona. Okay, the aura around you is magnificent. The aura around you is magnificent. Okay, we're going to go right into this because there's much to pack into this. And I want to just say before I begin the interview that this interview will be re-edited, and there will be many references made which will not appear on the screen but would appear in the re-edited version. The re-edited version will be jam-packed full of references that you'll see in the comments and the adjacent pages on our YouTube channel. So I'll now go right into it. Good morning, sir. I'm going to ask you, I know you very well. I'm going to ask you, please, just to say your name, the organization you represent, okay? And you'll just humble me, okay, because I've got a very anglicized name, okay? Just for the benefit of the audience, explain the meanings of your name. So the name, begin with your name, the organization, explain the meaning of your birth name. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, my brother. Well, I am Sabelo Sibanda. The organization that I represent is called the International Alliance of Loctivists. Mm-hmm. And I'm based in Cape Town, as you've already indicated. Mm-hmm. The name Sabelo basically means gift. And at the same time, the name speaks to, I don't know what's happening with the connectivity. Let me try and move to a different spot. I seem to be freezing on and off.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's happening. I seem to be freezing. Let me just move to another space. Sorry about that, my brother.
It's not a problem. Don't you worry. Not a problem. We want to hear you in your magnificence. There you go.
Yeah, I just want to come much closer to the router and see if that makes any difference.
Good.
Okay. Is that, I think that is better.
That's better, yes. Much better,
much
yes.
better.
And your light is good now.
Okay, so
yes.
Yeah, I'm actually sitting outside now.
Good. Sit outside. Enjoy the sun's ray. Rah! Yeah? That's what the melanin is for, you know? We derive great inspiration from that melanin. Yes. There you go.
Okay, yeah. We got that.
That's perfect.
Let's see if we can get the best light there.
Okay.
Okay,
that's perfect.
We have it.
That's perfect. Yes.
Yeah. Now, so what I was saying, my brother, is that the name Sabelo means gift, which also basically means an allocation. And I like to consider myself a gift to humanity. And that's why I do the work that I do. And in saying that, Sibanda, basically our praise names is Otawuduna, Uvodloza, Umhlato Ngahlulwa Thambo, Umaqhoba, because our totem is lion. So now, if you see on my WhatsApp, it says Ongahlulwa Thambo. That basically means the one who is not defeated by any bone, the bone crusher, Uvodloza.
Oh, yes.
To any situation and will fight through to the end, basically, because the lion never give up. The lion never give up. We just fight through all the way. So that's who I am, my brother. And the Loctivist, by virtue of the fact that I'm a lawyer and also an activist, I therefore coined the word Loctivist. And now, basically, the people refer to me as the People's Loctivist because that is who I am. I fight for the rights of the people. I have taken it to myself that by virtue of the fact that I'm a lawyer, I have to use the law for the betterment of humanity. Just like you were talking earlier about the importance of humanity. that
Yes. Yes.
people have to use their giftings as God gave them for
Yes.
purposes of advancing the interests of humanity. And that's one
Absolutely.
of the reasons why we're so concerned about this treaty,
Okay.
this
Can I
agreement.
before can I before we get
Mhm.
onto the treaty, just want to just
Yeah.
stick on your name and the meaning, and those are powerful descriptors that you've provided to us. Okay. Do you believe you've lived up to your parents' aspirations for you?
Um, if their aspirations were informed from the very beginning by the name that they gave me, yes,
Yes.
I believe I am. I
Good for you.
am doing the best that I can in that regard, and by therefore encouraging the gift in me, which
Hmm.
is the legal side of who I
Yes.
am, and doing what I'm now doing for humanity. I do believe I did, and I still do, and will
Hmm.
maintain that till the very end,
Yes. Well
whenever
said.
that end will be.
Well, it's a long
It's
time to come. A long time to come. I'm
absolutely.
affirming it's a long time to come.
Yeah,
There you are.
absolutely. I affirm that with you. And you see, my basic personal motto in saying
Yes.
that is be the best that you were created to be.
That's right.
Because
That's
I'm a
right.
genuine believer that the primary aim that I have to seek to pursue is
Hmm.
being the best that God created me to be. And
Yes.
by
Yes.
focusing on being the best, I don't waste time looking for faults in other people. If we
Indeed.
could all just but focus on being the best, in my being the
Absolutely.
best, I therefore put myself in a position where I help the next person to also be the
That's right.
best. But if
That's
I
right.
spend my time bashing other people, it means
That's
we'll
right.
all be bashing each other.
That's
So
right.
I would like to encourage all the viewers that
Mm.
let's focus on being the best that we were created to be. And that's the best
That's
way
your
that we
motto.
can take
That's your
humanity
motto.
forward. That's my motto. That's my personal motto. Be the best
Okay, in
that you
that case,
were
hold
created
on.
to be.
You've said it. You've set the tone. Absolutely right. You've set the tone. Yeah. Let's be the best we can possibly be. I want to
Yeah.
now focus, if I may, Isabella. I want to now focus on this treaty that was
Yes, sir.
that was very recently approved. This month, in
Hmm.
fact, of May. Okay.
Yeah, just
Um,
this
uh,
past week.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, the past week indeed. So here we go. Can you describe the international? Forgive me. Why did most African nations agree to implement the World Health Organization 2025 pandemic treaty? Why did they agree to it? And I note, except for Egypt, it was unanimous amongst African countries. And except for Jamaica in the Caribbean, it was the only other non other African-led country that did not vote for it. But in both cases, they abstained. They didn't vote against it. They abstained, expressing
Yeah.
reservations. So why
Hmm.
did the, with the exception of Egypt, why did these African nations agree to implement the 2025 pandemic treaty?
My brother, that's a very difficult question to
Okay.
answer.
Sorry it's difficult. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Oh, no, no, no. It's important that such difficulties be put out there and be
Mhm,
problematized so that our
mhm.
people will begin to have a greater appreciation of what it is that we have to contend with.
Yeah.
Because, you see, the reason why I say it's a difficult question to answer is
Mhm,
because clearly the terms of the agreement, because you
mhm.
remember that initially when this thing was being touted, the
Yes.
World Health Organization was clearly calling it a pandemic preparedness treaty, and
Mhm,
then now they've pushed it through and replaced the word treaty with agreement so that it does not seem as heavy as what the initial intention was.
mhm.
I think one of the things that Africa finds itself in, unfortunately,
Okay.
there is this dependence mentality
Mhm,
whereby, the African countries signing on to this agreement and supporting this agreement basically look at the fact that the African Union, for instance, who funds the African Union? We
Yeah.
don't fund our own entity, which is supposed to be advancing our interests as African people. So now,
Indeed.
if we cannot fund ourselves on such a critical institution that is supposed to protect our interests as African people, how do we say no to entities that are passing legislation which may or may not be to our advantage? Because definitely the questions have to be asked as to whose advantage are we really pursuing by signing on to this thing. But then again, let's also give it a slight background issue to the extent that the treaty should be read together with the international health regulations.
Can I just pause you just for a second? 'Cause I'm going to
No
get onto
problem.
that question because
Mhm.
I don't want to just capture this because this is really important. There are many hundreds, if not thousands, who will review this particular exchange. You said the reason why they've signed it is because they continue a dependency mentality. Okay, there's a belief that, you've cited the example of the African Union. Okay, it's been largely funded by foreign countries, non-African countries,
Absolutely.
and therefore he who pays the piper falls the tune. In other words, yes. In
No,
other
most
words,
definitely.
yes.
Most
Okay, good.
definitely. Look at it from this perspective, my brother.
Okay, indeed.
Within the context of the African Union is the African CDC, African Center
Yes.
for Disease Control. And
Yes.
basically, you see, our CDC is following anything and everything that the American CDC says and does. And our African CDC is not self-funded either. So
It's not.
now
Okay.
it's
Okay.
not. So
Okay.
now you find that by virtue of the fact that the authorities who are supposed to be heading and running these entities are themselves compromised by the policies of other nations and other people, they therefore just follow. Look at what happened during the so called COVID-19 pandemic, where our governments, our CDC, were literally taking their cues, they were taking their direction from non-elected World Health Organization led by a supposed doctor who is not in actual fact a doctor. It's
Oh.
amazing how you can have a non-doctor heading an organization that speaks to the health of the world. And everyone seems to be okay with it. Everyone just accepts it. And our African governments find themselves highly compromised in this regard. And this is
Okay.
the reason why we now have
Okay.
to stand up in this particular regard and begin to problematize the role of the people in correcting the direction that the governments are setting us on, and
Right.
therefore begin to take responsibility for our own future. More
Yes.
particularly, my brother, if you were to issue out a questionnaire around the world right now and ask how many people even know who the representatives of their countries were at this gathering, you'll be amazed to find that 90, if not 99%, or 99.99999% of the world don't even know who these decision makers are. They don't even know how they got to be there and making decisions for them. They never voted for them. They're
Okay.
just there taking decisions for us.
If if I may, then, my brother, and I hear you. I
Mhm,
want to be a little fair to the bureaucrats and others who will be viewing this. And
mhm.
you know me. Yep. I want to just
Yes.
be fair to them. Okay. Okay. And I just want to read a summary of aspects of the treaty very quickly for you.
Please
Okay.
do. Please do.
And 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 I just wanted, and I'm going to probe. yourselves if this summary accurate. Okay, there we go.
Sure.
One of the key provisions include equitable access to health products. Now, it
Mhm.
says here that countries must ensure fair distribution on pandemic related health tools, like vaccines, for example.
Mhm.
20% of the vaccines produced should be allocated to the World Health Organization for global public health needs. In other words, where you have countries with the manufacturing of vaccines,
Mhm.
20% of their output should be given to the World Health Organization so they can support global public health needs. That's the first vision. Second one I see here, it's um, pathogen access and benefit sharing. They call it the PAB system. What it says here,
Mhm.
nations agree to share genetic data of pathogens quickly and transparently. In return, they gain fair access to vaccine treatments and diagnostic development from that data. In other words, you have someone with, let's say, an unusual strain of Ebola, let's say. You then take that pathogen and you share it with the World Health Organization, or indeed one of these big multinational pharmaceuticals.
Mhm.
They will do the analysis. They will then share with you fair access to the vaccine produced to respond, the treatment protocols, diagnostics and development from that data that is provided. That again seems quite reasonable. Let me continue, then you can respond. The
Mhm.
third provision I see here, strengthen global coordination, which in the face of it seems quite reasonable. Countries commit to timely reporting and data sharing during health threats. The World Health Organization will act as the central hub for pandemic, and this is intelligence and coordination, which seems a reasonable role for the World Health Organization. Another provision, key provision I see here, support for low and middle income countries. High income nations must, he's used the words must, not shall or
Mhm.
sorry, could or whatever. It says must. He could have said shall, but must assist low income countries with funding, supplies, and training. This includes building lab capacities and healthcare infrastructure. Again, it seems a perfectly reasonable provision. I've got two more I want to quickly read out.
Maybe
Pandemic.
my brother, let's do it this way. Sorry.
Okay,
The list is going longer. I might not
okay,
remember
okay.
some
I,
of the
I'm gonna.
items. So maybe what we can do is maybe do two at a time.
Okay,
You do
let's just
two,
take
I
the first
respond to.
two. Let's take the first
Okay,
two:
so
equitable
the
access
first,
to health products and the pathogen access and benefit sharing system, or the PAB system. Yeah, respond to those two. Equitable access to health products first of all. What's your
my
contention with that
brother,
provision?
my response will be
Mhm.
premised upon an African-centered perspective, in
Okay.
the sense
Ah.
that
Uh-huh.
what is
Forgive
being
me for
referred.
interrupting. Forgive me for
Yeah,
interrupting. Yes, you're right.
yeah,
Maybe if let me ask that question in this way round, if I may.
yeah,
I note in your notes to me that you've used the term Ubuntu
yes.
principles.
Mhm.
Just clarify what you mean by Ubuntu principles, and then we'll return to these provisions because that provides a useful context. What do you mean by Ubuntu principles? Please go ahead.
Well, basically, my brother, Ubuntu, the encapsulation of
Mhm.
Ubuntu, which in itself is a fundamental African imperative within
Okay.
the philosophy of Africans, is the aspect that I am because we are. We
Uh-huh.
are because I am.
I am.
For
Yes.
the being that is Sabelo to be complete, Sabelo
Yes.
is only complete to the extent that Sabelo is functional within the community. For the
Yes.
community to be complete, The
Yes.
completeness of the family of the community is informed by my being part of the community. I am nothing without the community. The community is
Absolutely.
nothing without me. There
Yes.
is something missing. There is no longer the fullness of the community as long as there is an individual who is missing or an individual who is no longer playing their role. But within
Right.
the context of healthcare, it is also
Uh-huh.
necessary to realize that it speaks to philosophical concept whereby we emphasize that individual pathology,
Hmm.
and we look at a mechanistic treatment and that technologically driven interventions are not necessarily our answer. We teach that
Okay.
Ubuntu in the context of health speaks to more than just the absence of disease. It
Okay.
speaks to a state of total equilibrium, a harmonious alignment of the physical, the emotional, the communal, the environmental, and the spiritual. And this is one of the things that is missing from this document. This
Uh-huh.
agreement is words, words, and more words. There is no spirit that speaks to humanity within this document. There is no spiritual dimension of life in this document. There is no communality, in as much as the words that have been used would purport to give that impression. That is not what is intended. That is not the direction that this thing is going in. On the contrary, it is
Mm-hmm.
designed to ensure the total subjugation of indigenous communities, the total subjugation of natural healing, which is represented mainly in traditional healing and the naturopathic route. It is an attempt to impose allopathy on the whole world in the name of health. It is an attempt to,
If I may, if I may, because
yes,
now
my
you,
brother.
I want to really focus on the first provision that we're responding to. That's the equitable access to health products. What if the treaty does result in those countries where the pharmaceutical companies are manufacturing the vaccines, for example, okay, and those countries honor the treaty that if you produce 1,000 vaccines, 200 will be given over to the World Health Organization. What if that happens? Isn't that a good step? That's not a good outcome as a result of the treaty?
Maybe, my brother, what we would then
Okay.
have to think around first
Okay.
is when we talk about a vaccine,
Mhm.
what exactly is it that we are talking about? Because what has basically happened is that the whole idea of what is called a vaccine is in actual fact not the traditional vaccine that we're talking to here. And when they're talking about the equitable access to vaccines, they are not talking about the traditionally defined vaccine, which spoke to a weakened pathogen, which spoke to an attenuated pathogen. This is now talking about artificial substances and the necessity for the World Health Organization during the so-called pandemic to redefine vaccine was so that they can introduce poisons into people's lives. So
Okay.
now,
Can I
if
can I
what we
just
are told,
hold on before you do that? This is what I was trying to want to avoid that. Why?
mhm,
Why? Because with the exception of Egypt, which simply abstained,
yes,
all countries have signed up to this. Okay. So I'm
mhm,
not going to, if I may, enjoy with you the idea that poison is being distributed, but I would enjoy with you that the traditional practices, which clearly is what 80% of the African population, continental African population relies upon, is clearly
yeah,
worked. because the last pandemic didn't result in mass killings as occurred in the United States, for example, or countries such as that. Okay, it didn't result in clearly the traditional African traditional medicines worked. Okay, so I don't want to. You said at the beginning we don't want to criticize everyone. Okay. So we can talk to our strengths. Okay, but the principle, nevertheless, if the treaty results in 20% of the world output of vaccines, however they're made, is shared with the rest of the world, okay, via the World Health Organization, I don't think you and I are disagreeing that's a positive provision. What we're questioning is the quality and the efficacy of the vaccines. Okay, and I think that's a reasonable discussion. I nor you yourself are able to comment on the efficacy at this stage unless we had medical training. Okay, I'd like to have doctors in the room. I'd like to have doctors in the room to have that discussion. So I'm not going to pursue it. But I want to
I'm
take you
with
on
you.
to. Thank you. I want to take you on to the other provision, the second provision, if I may. This conscious of
Mhm.
time, so we need to keep it moving. The pathogen access and benefit sharing, or PAB systems. This is
Yeah.
where nations agree to share genetic data of pathogens quickly and transparently. In return, they gain fair access to vaccine treatment protocols, diagnostic development from that data produced from the pathogen shared. Okay, that appears on the face of it to be helpful, isn't it?
I'm glad that you premised it by saying on the face of it, because in real terms, my brother, what
Okay.
this is doing, again, I will look at it from the African viewpoint.
Yes.
Let's look at what happened during the so-called COVID, particularly with Omicron, which was supposedly discovered in South Africa and Botswana,
Ah,
who
yes. Yes.
quickly shared it with the World Health Organization and who ran with it. And when the benefits were being ripped from that particular pathogen, the two countries didn't get anything. So
Oh.
now, the most critical thing, my brother, this is an attempt to basically take advantage of traditional healing. This is an attempt to take advantage of natural medication. It has nothing to do with general benefits. This is, again, another way of ensuring that the pharmaceutical companies benefit from medication that they don't know anything about. So now,
Okay. Can I just ask you to
mhm,
hold there? Hold there. It's okay.
yeah,
I heard the
mhm,
statement. I'm going to
yes,
read it. I'm going to read this provision again.
yeah,
Because remember, we've got a wide audience here. I want to make sure
hmm,
we talk to the provision as it's actually written into the treaty. And
please
just
do.
for the benefit of the audience here, I've read the treaty now on 5 times over the past 24 hours. Okay, just to ensure
That
I'm able
is
to
good.
speak with a necessity.
Mm,
Just to ensure I'm able to have this conversation with Sabella. Okay, and I will
yeah.
repeat. It says here.
Mhm.
Nations agree to share genetic data of pathogens quickly and transparently. Okay. In return, they gain fair access to vaccine treatment protocols, diagnostic developments from that data. Okay. So, in other words, there's information sharing. What I think you're saying, based upon the most recent experience in COVID-19, when the Omicron was produced by South Africa, in fact, you did not receive that benefit, yep, as laid out in this provision. Although this treaty didn't exist then, maybe if the treaty had existed, you would have received the benefit. South Africans en masse would have received the benefit. Would that be a reasonable conclusion of what you're describing?
Well, depending on what benefit is. If
Okay.
benefit
What?
means getting vaccines, so called, then that is not a benefit. That is a step backwards because it's actually taking us away from our own natural ways of healing and
Okay.
relying on allopathy. Because what we should be talking to is the necessity to ensure that traditional medication, that natural medication, does not play second fiddle to allopathy. What
Okay.
this supposed treaty is actually doing in this the pubs that you've just read just now is
Yes.
actually consolidating the medical knowledge. It's actually getting people to run around looking for so-called pathogens which
Hmm.
have potential to cause pandemics. In actual fact, it would be more correct. There is a gentleman by the name of James Roguski, who, they talk to it and say that they are looking for pathogens with pandemic potential. But
Yes.
James properly puts it when he says pathogens with pandemic profiteering potential. Because
Hmm.
here, what is
Hmm.
basically happening is that we're looking to nature and we're saying, let's identify those aspects in nature that can be modified and therefore become problematic in the future to cause a pandemic. If this
Hmm.
thing has been in existence for the past millions of years or however long, why should we now be looking for it and sending it to the World Health Organization to send it to Pharmacia so that they can then determine that this has a potential to cause a pandemic and therefore I want to benefit from that? So it's basically putting profits over people. Then we want to start looking to nature for things that we can adulterate so that we can make money while someone else is making more money out of that particular process.
If I
And
may,
you
then
will,
at this point,
brother.
if I may at this point, because what you I think
Mhm.
you're saying is that the natural herbs, plants to use as part of the traditional African medicines regimes, okay, um, possess active ingredients, and it's those active ingredients that potentially are patented by the pharmaceutical companies, on which they're then able to claim intellectual rights over, which is the basis of them making money. Okay, I
Yes, that
suppose
is
it,
the one aspect. That
that's
is
right.
the one aspect
That's right.
whereby
Hmm.
the knowledge
Hmm.
that is known locally, the
Yes.
locally available remedies, the locally
Yes.
available medicines are
Yes.
then twerked and synthesized.
That's right.
And then once they've been synthesized, someone claims an intellectual property over something that God gave us. And
Yes.
we take it that copyright, for instance, from our
Hmm.
African perspective, is the right to
Yes.
copy, which basically means that knowledge is common and knowledge
Yes.
is there to be shared. You can say
Yes.
something now and it resonates with me. I have a right to copy that thought and develop it
Hmm.
without claiming ownership because it
Yes.
belongs
Yes.
to the community. It
Okay.
benefits the community.
Okay.
It's for everyone. And the
Okay.
fact that as we speak right now, are you aware that this document that was supposedly adopted is actually incomplete? And the most critical part of it is this annex on the PABS.
Hmm.
There is an intergovernmental body that has been set up, which will sit, I think, for the first time in July, to come up with the terms of how the PABS is going to be
Okay.
implemented. How do you sign and how do you adopt an agreement, whereas the core fundamental of its implementation is yet to
Hmm.
be negotiated after adoption? This
Okay.
is an attempt to basically ensure that they sneak in things that will now regulate the manner in which so-called pathogens are treated and shared, and how the pharmaceuticals are going to continue to benefit at the expense of traditional medicine, at the expense of the naturopaths, and ensure that by 2025, the whole idea is that by the 79th World Health Assembly, the PABS must be finalized. The annex must be
Okay. Right.
finalized and therefore make part of the agreement. And again, what it's going to do, which we've already seen with the negotiation, is that there's no public participation. Where are the people? Why are we not allowed to make an input? Why are the traditional healers not being invited to make an input? Why are the naturopaths not being
Yes.
invited to make an input? Because it is known that as soon as that knowledge is made public and that knowledge is incorporated into this document, it will kill the impact of the benefits and the profits that the pharmaceuticals are playing.
Okay.
Basically, what we
Ask
are
you.
dealing with here
Yes.
is the World Health
Okay.
Organization positioning itself as the drug dealer of note.
Can I ask you just to pause right there? And
Yes, sir.
that's an interesting point to end in Africa. Interesting one, because the third provision, key provision, is to
Mhm.
strengthen the global coordination. Countries commit to timely reporting, data sharing during health threat. The World Health Organization will act as the central hub for pandemic intelligence and coordination. Okay, as I
Why
say.
is that necessary? Well, why is that necessary? If we have an issue in any country, let that country work things out and determine for itself what is best for itself. Because
Mm,
now, you see, during the so-called COVID pandemic, one of
mhm,
the things that was happening when African countries were submitting their reports,
mhm.
they were being dismissed as fictitious because they
Oh,
were lower than the projection. You remember
ah,
that
right.
when
Yes,
this
I
thing
do
was
recall.
announced,
I
there was a
recall. Yes.
projection that within the first 6 months, no less than 300,000 Africans would have died. And it never
Yes.
happened for the
No, it didn't
duration of the
happen.
whole thing. Say,
Indeed.
supposing the reporting was fictitious, as was alleged, that we were not giving out the full data. We would have seen it because we would have been burying people left, right, and center, and we were
That's right.
not. We were
I
even
leave that
told
there.
that
Leave that there,
hospitals,
if I may. If I may,
sure,
the point has been made. The point has been made. As I said earlier on, 80% of the population relies upon traditional African medicine regimes, and it was clearly
yes.
obvious that the population is growing, is thriving. You know, despite the pandemic. Unlike places in Britain where the population is actually declining, and unlike in the US, it's actually the core population is declining. Unlike in Japan, where the core population is declining. Unlike in India and China, where the core population is declining. In Africa, the population is increasing, which implies that the traditional African medicine regime works. So let me move on. Let me move on to the next one. It's okay. This conscious of time, we won't get a lot into this interview, and there's much more to be said. Okay. Now, the next provision is that the support low and middle income countries, African countries essentially, but anyway,
Mhm.
high income countries, which essentially mean Western countries such as Britain, America, Germany, France, and so on, indeed China, must assist low income countries with funding, the supplies and training, and this includes building lab capacities and healthcare infrastructure. Again, on the face of it, that seems perfectly reasonable if you've got enough wealth and you can support those who don't have that wealth and that capacity to help them to build the labs and to build the healthcare infrastructure. That seems perfectly reasonable, isn't it?
My brother,
Okay.
maybe let me premise my response with a
Yes,
question.
of course.
If you are starving
Mm,
and I come to you and say I'm helping you,
mhm.
and I'm stuffing you with fast foods left, right, and center, will I be doing you any good?
No.
Absolutely. So the issue here is that the things that they say they want to support us with is synthetic medication. They are not helping us to develop our own traditional herbs
Mhm,
and
mhm.
medicines. They are not
Yes.
helping us to research, if at all there is need for research, on our naturopathic medications. What they are saying is the support that they are talking about is flooding our health markets with their pharmaceutical drugs. And as far as I'm concerned, that is not help. We would rather find our own ways of developing our own medication, see how the parts and the traditional healers can work together and come up with protocols that are going to help us. We
Yes.
don't need that kind of assistance, my brother. And that's one of the reasons why Africa has to reject this thing. And the adoption, thankfully, does not mean that it has been implemented. As you rightly put it, that 60 countries have to ratify. And we have the ability as African countries to get ourselves out of this thing. We don't
Okay.
have to be bound because at the moment, all that is there is a principled position. It is
That's right.
not the treaty. It is not the agreement. We still have time to rescue humanity out of this thing. So, definitely, my brother, that provision should be properly interpreted within the context of the nature of the help. Helping me to die is not helping me. Helping me to live is helping me.
Thank you. Again, the point is well made. This is fine. It is well. It is well. I know the audience will resonate with the audience because it's perfectly reasonable. The next provision, pandemic preparedness reviews. Nations
Yes.
must regularly evaluate and report their readiness for pandemics. Peer review mechanisms will assess progress and guide improvements. That seemed a perfectly reasonable collective approach to ensure that your nation, our nations, are prepared to withstand the next pandemic. Isn't it? That's a reasonable provision, isn't it?
When is the next pandemic?
Oh, we're prepared for if it comes.
When was the last pandemic?
Oh, okay. Uh, uh, you answer your own question. You tell. You tell us.
Okay, I'll tell you that, my brother, a lot of people think COVID was a pandemic. A lot of people think H1N1 was a pandemic.
Clarify,
Those,
please. Yes, please
oh,
clarify.
absolutely, absolutely. 2009, when is it Miss Chan was heading the World Health Organization, that's when
Mhm.
they redefined the pandemic in real
Explain.
terms. In
Explain what you
real
mean. Explain.
terms,
Explain
yes.
what you mean. Yeah.
In real terms, the traditional meaning of pandemic spoke to the extent of death and severity of illness of people, therefore qualifying it as a pandemic. But then now, when they changed the definition, they simply said it's determined by the spread of a virus. So now you can simply say, okay, we say now there is a virus and this virus is in 10 countries. This is a pandemic, regardless of the severity of whatever it is that they are calling a virus. If indeed it is a virus, because there is a debate going on right now about whether viruses exist or do not exist. I will not go into that because I'm not qualified to speak to that particular aspect. I've read a lot about it, but there is a lot that I still don't understand from a medical and a scientific perspective. So now the thing is, are they talking about what they will plant and then tell us that there is a virus that is going on and it's all over the world, it's in this country and that country or whatever? Or are they talking about the traditional meaning of a pandemic? Because the beauty that they basically enjoy is that they have the power to define. They have the power to decide what is and what isn't without necessarily taking humanity into that particular equation or that
Okay.
particular aspect, so that now they are the ones who quickly say, now this is a pandemic or this is not a pandemic or something like
Okay.
that. I'm trying to get
Forgive me.
better light
It's
still.
okay. It's okay. Can I just ask you
Mhm,
again? Let's quite slowly to
mhm.
provide the definition of a pandemic prior to the change? Just say it slowly so we've understood it. But I'm as you're speaking, looking up the references, and I'm seeing, just so you know, a
Mhm.
widespread occurrence of an infectious disease over a whole country or the world at a particular time.
Mhm.
That's what I see the references are implying. Or
Mhm.
another reference says a pandemic is when a new disease or new strain of an existing disease spreads worldwide. Um, now, that is clear to me, and it accords with my both empirical and academic understanding of the term pandemic. What do you
Mhm.
mean by pandemic? That is a variant from those two descriptors I've just read out.
Well, basically, what I mean is that the traditional manner in which a pandemic was determined was not necessarily by saying it has spread to this place and spread to that place, this particular condition that we are talking to. It's actually about the death that is being recorded as a result of a
Okay.
particular condition. It is about the severity of the um,
Mortality rate. You're saying the mortality
yeah,
rate is
it's the
what defines
mortality rate, it's
what
the
percentage
severity
then?
of the condition as well.
Yes. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Um.
So for
I,
that
I, I,
for that
I,
reason, therefore,
mhm.
for that reason, therefore,
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
clear that we have to be circumspect in
Right.
what we are talking to when we talk about a pandemic. So now you find that like I said to you earlier, that the background to the change dates back to 2009,
Yes.
whereby initially the definition spoke about a widespread geographic spread, severe illness, and high
Hmm.
mortality. And
Hmm.
then the revised version talks about a new virus, talks about human to human transmission and
Yes.
worldwide spread. But then
Yes.
now we are no longer talking about mortality. So if we allow a situation where there is fluidity of definition of issues, we will find ourselves consistently changing to the whim of how the World Health Organization wants us to direct our lives, and
Hmm.
at the expense of people's sovereignty, at the expense of national sovereignties, and at the promotion of the interests of the pharmaceutical industries, which in themselves are benefiting from these redefinitions. Because even in 2009, as soon as the definition changed, the pharmaceutical companies were ready with the vaccines.
Okay. Can I just ask you to pause there? That's fine because you've made the point.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
after this show, again, you'll provide some additional references, which will be included in the re-edited version of this interview. The
Absolutely.
re-edited version will have far more information, so watch the space. The last provision I just want to refer to, if I may, then we'll look at
Mhm,
your top 5 recommendations. So the last provision we'd look at is the legal and ethical commitment. Countries agree to uphold human rights during public health emergencies. Measures like lockdown and surveillance must be proportionate and lawful. That seems perfectly reasonable, isn't it? How a country responds to a health emergency being regulated, so it must be proportionate and lawful. In other words, respect one's human rights. That seems a perfectly reasonable provision. I think you could agree with that one, can you not?
that implies that lockdowns are human rights issues, in the sense that, for me, the whole concept, the whole idea behind locking down people is a human rights violation. More particularly, that the whole process of locking down people impacts their immune systems. It weakens the immune system of an individual. A person cannot stay under house arrest simply because we've been told that there is a medical condition. More so within the context of Africa again, where we have our own traditional healing systems, where we have
Mm.
our own naturopathic healing systems. Why should we be locked down when we have the ability to heal? When we have the wherewithal to heal ourselves? So that in itself becomes a human rights violation.
Can
So
I ask you to pause there? It's fine. You made the point, and we said earlier on, clearly, the traditional African medicine regime worked because there wasn't lockdown in Africa. Okay, okay, and the
well,
population
some
is
countries
thriving.
like South Africa did try. Mhm.
They try. I know they try, but it didn't work either. But it was very clear. It's very clear that there is some contradiction here in these wordings, and the nation states will have to review those wordings before they incorporate it into their national laws. What I want to now, if I may, in the sort of closing minutes, is to look at your top 5 recommendations to protect African sovereignty, traditional and naturopathic medicines, and indigenous knowledge. What are your top 5 recommendations, Isabella? What would you recommend?
Well, basically, um, my recommendations are twofold in the sense that my primary recommendation
Yes.
is for Africa not to even sign on to this thing, for Africa
Okay.
not to give recognition to this thing, because we can have our own African centered document if we feel that we need one that does not impose allopathy on African people, that does not impose World Health Organization standards of health on African people. And the important thing is that, in as much as I say African people, this speaks to humanity as a whole. It
Indeed.
speaks
Indeed.
to everyone in the world who basically regards themselves as a sovereign being. This treaty, so called, this agreement, so called, is not necessary.
Okay.
But
All right.
in the event that Africa, in its lack of wisdom, decides that it wants to go ahead with this particular issue, Africa will have to ensure that the dignity, autonomy, and contributions to health are informed by the recognition, a clear and qualified recognition of naturopathic and African traditional medicine, with the people having the right to elect as to a medical regime that they want to be regulated by. If they want to take the allopathic route, let it be their choice. If they want to take the African traditional route, the naturopathic route,
Should be given
let it be.
choice.
They
Okay.
can have that. Secondly, it
Okay.
has to be clear that there is an institutionalization of indigenous and community participation. No
Mm-hmm.
decisions should be taken about our health without our African traditional healers, our
Mm-hmm.
naturopaths, the
Mm-hmm.
African people in general, the indigenous
Yes.
knowledge holders being part of the decision making process. As we speak right now, it would be interesting to know how many of those people who took this decision in the name of the African countries actually consulted with any of the people that I am talking to now. And I
Mm-hmm.
bet you the answer is zero. So
Yes.
now
Okay.
we have to also ensure, again, I emphasize that these recommendations are only if Africa feels that it has to sign up on this. Because what happened with the adoption, as far as I'm concerned, is a treasonous betrayal of the African people, the treasonous betrayal of the aspirations of African people regarding a future that protects their well being. So now I would say establish a robust legal protection against biopiracy and harmful
Mm-hmm.
research practices. The
Yes.
PABS that you were speaking to earlier, one of
Mm-hmm.
the reasons why they're looking at this sharing, so called, of pathogens is so that they can practice gain of function research, where they take an innocent naturally occurring, um, I don't know, pathogen, if you call it that, or
Hmm.
just some naturally occurring creation of God,
Yes, yes.
and then they go and weaponize it, make it lethal, see
Mm.
how it would harm a human
Uh,
being, and
Forgive
then
me,
release it on.
hold on, if I may, we're not
Please do.
suggesting we are not suggesting that either nation states or companies are weaponizing our pathogens in order to destroy humanity. I did want to emphasize that you're not actually suggesting that. Okay, I'm not suggesting that. We should not suggest that because you're not able to present evidence that that is indeed the case.
I'm
So,
not, my
okay,
brother,
I want to be
I'm not
careful because we're in
suggesting.
public. This is very much a public
Let me
statement.
just
So, yeah, go ahead.
let me just put that clearly.
Thank you.
I'm not suggesting anything in that regard. Manner in which the gain of function research has been done has
Hmm.
been to take these innocent, naturally occurring, I don't know, pathogens or whatever you
I
want to
understand. I
call
understand
them,
what you're saying. Yep, I understand what you're
and
saying. Mm.
weaponize them, because this is what has even come out. There is documentary evidence that has come out
Can I
that
just
even the
forgive me?
so-called COVID-19
Oh,
was
hold
weaponized.
on, hold on,
And
Sabali. I hear you. I hear you. In this part of the paper you supplied to me, you refer
yes,
to this. You said, while the so-called treaty proposed to the establishment of the PAB systems, okay, its provisions lay ground for the promotion of gain of function research, which you just spoke to.
yes,
This exposes African nations and indigenous communities to the risk of biopiracy, okay, where
hmm,
biological samples and traditional knowledge are used for commercial or scientific gain without fair compensation or consent. So the absence of legal safeguards undermines trust and fails to uphold the principle of justice and reciprocity. Now that was a perfectly reasonable riposte to that provision. What you're going on to at the moment is outside of the provision of this particular interview, because we don't have the authoritative evidence of the type of weaponization that you're describing, and I don't want to go there. Okay, I don't want to go there, and it kind of without evidence, I would ask for the absolute evidence that we can scrutinize, and we need to do that separately. Can I just ask
no,
you
that's fine.
in
Maybe we can do another show one day where we're just
separately?
looking at the evidence.
Absolutely, absolutely. Can I just ask you in terms of recommendation about the cultural and spiritual autonomy? And I'm just going to read what you say is absent from the
Please
treaty, and
do.
you've alluded to it. So I did want to read it, and this is another reason why I have you here. Because when I read this,
Mhm.
this was sound, very level-headed thinking. If the cultural and spiritual autonomy is absent, and you've said it on a number of occasions, and you say here, the treaty does not account for the cultural and spiritual dimension of health that are vital to many African communities. By ignoring these aspects, it risks introducing so-called pandemic measures that are illegitimate, culturally inappropriate, or even harmful. This is not only undermine the effectiveness of public health responses, but also violates the rights of African communities to health systems that reflect their values. Traditions
Mhm.
and worldview is totally disregards thus undermines the principles of Ubuntu. And I get that. That makes, again, when I read that, that was perfectly reasonable. It made perfect sense, and I agreed it is absent. But the other recommendation you made, I thought was really important. The participation of indigenous peoples and African institutions, which again you've inferred here, it being excluded,
Yeah.
which you've just spoken to. The drafting
Mhm.
process has not consulted or included representatives from indigenous groups and traditional knowledge custodians. This exclusion creates a significant democratic deficit in the treaty formulation and has deliberately silenced the very voices most affected by the proposed global health policies. It reflects a governance imbalance that must be resisted, as the proposed treaty is not equitable and not legitimate. Now, again, I read that. That is absolutely spot on, and you've inferred around that recommendation in your in the dialogue here. And the last one you've noted here is the participation of natural paths. Okay, it was excluded. Now, if we read what you wrote again, made perfect sense. The drafting process has not included natural paths. And by that we mean, of course, those are the traditional knowledge holders, those who apply that knowledge and are responsible for the fact that 80% of the population across the continent relies upon these people, and it's quite evident that they were successfully fighting off the so-called, I would say, COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, so clearly they are effective. So let me go on. The drafting process has not included natural paths, which created a significant democratic and medical deficit. Despite the importance of natural paths to health systems, the voice of natural paths has been silenced and excluded. It reflects a governance imbalance that must be resisted, as the proposed treaty is not equitable and illegitimate. So that made
Absolutely.
perfect sense. Absolutely makes perfect sense. Okay, that makes perfect sense. And I hope those who are leaders across the continent, indeed across the world, take note of these recommendations, because they are well thought through, level-headed recommendations, which speaks to a nation's ability, particularly nations that have existed, the people that existed for hundreds of thousands of years, and has clearly been exposed to many maladies, whether it be a virus or bacteria, and been able successfully to resist and thrive in that environment. And COVID-19 will but a more recent example of the resilience that is within the natural path, the people, that intimate knowledge of nature, and to use nature to boost our immune response and defend ourselves against those viruses and bacteria that might affect our health. So it is you're quite right. We need to value that knowledge and not exclude it. I 100% agree with you.
Absolutely.
That's that's why.
And whatever
Mhm,
treaty, so
mhm,
called, that
mhm,
we are to sign on to, if we sign on to it, is illegitimate and irrelevant to the African people and the
mhm,
generality of humanity that
mhm.
does not subscribe to allopathy. And as long
Yes.
as those voices are excluded, then it goes back to the issue that you spoke to earlier about
Mhm.
human rights. What
Yes.
about the rights of those people who want to ensure that they are also given expression in a document like this? Because
Absolutely.
it's subject to abuse.
Yes, yes, 100%, 100% correct. And we've seen examples of it on many occasions with other institutions. There's no doubt
Yeah.
about that. So I've got, again, it's all logical. It makes perfect sense. The African leaders, indeed leaders worldwide, need to think of their own local provisions. Consider how it is that the natural paths, your local natural paths, have been able to defend the communities, and how can we find a balance? And I was asserting we need to find a balance between the natural path and the scientific approach, which is currently being popularized through the World Health Organization. We need to find a balance that respects our cultural sovereignty, our national sovereignty, our clinical, indeed, our traditional medicine sovereignty. That I believe is the needle and thread that we're trying to resolve, and that
That
requires
is
a
true,
much
my
broader
brother.
discussion. Of course,
Mm.
of course. Yep.
Yeah, definitely.
Mhm,
Provided as well that
mhm,
when we talk about science, we
mhm,
don't run the risk of what we have seen happening, where science ends up being treated as though it was a religion,
mhm,
where
mhm,
once science has spoken, no one is allowed to question, no one is allowed to debate any further.
mhm,
So
mhm.
this also speaks to the necessity to ensure that there is no abuse of science. If science has
Absolutely.
to be used, then science must be used for the benefit of humanity, with everyone who classifies themselves as a scientist having the right and the ability to challenge what their peers have said, not to be cancelled simply because you have a different viewpoint from what your peers have said.
Absolutely right. And just remind the audience again of the Ubuntu, the African Ubuntu affirmation. Affirmed inherent value of African peoples, affirmed the inherent sovereignty of African nations and African peoples, affirmed the value and prioritization of African health systems, ensures self-determination in health governance, and restores balance and fairness in international cooperation, which is what you're speaking to now. Absolutely
Absolutely.
right. Spot
Yeah.
on. Now,
Yeah.
and you go on to say this is not only a matter of health policy, but one of justice and cultural integrity and the right of African peoples to define and defend their own futures without having to kneel to anyone or entity. Praise Jah, Rastafari. Yes, absolutely. Who can argue with
Yeah.
that? I can't argue with that. You may want to
No,
expect.
absolutely. That is
We only now have 2 more minutes. 2 more minutes. Okay. I'm confident, based upon the messages I'm receiving, who I've not read out, but I don't have time on this occasion to read out. But we get you back again. Don't you worry. How can those who want to reach out to you? What's the best method for them to reach out to you to continue this dialogue? What would you recommend?
well, they can reach out on the email address info at locktivismalliance.org. Alternatively, they can send a WhatsApp message on +27
We won't give out that phone
73.
number on the air. Forgive me, we won't get that phone number on the air. I will include it as part of the commentary within the YouTube channel, if I may, just for
Okay, excellent.
security
Yeah,
purposes.
no, that's I'm happy with that. Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
that is how basically I'm reachable. And one of my primary messages as well is
Yes.
that the whole thrust of what we are doing is that
Yes.
we do accept that there are some people within the realm of politics who
Mm-hmm.
mean well and are
Yes.
working for the communities. We are here to stand with you and to support you to ensure
Absolutely.
that humanity is protected, to ensure that we address those aspects that speak to the advancement of who we are as humans.
Well said. Well said. That's a
Mhm.
good note to conclude on. We're definitely going to have you back again because there was a number of outstanding issues here. But you
Absolutely.
provided real insights. We now hope that the countries across the continent and the peoples across the continent will have that local dialogue. What this treaty means for this nation state in the context of Ubuntu, which is an affirmation across the continent. It's not unusual. It is clear that we must ensure
Absolutely.
an
Absolutely.
African-centric approach to signing up to this treaty. If, as you say, we should sign up at all, but I just want to keep it clear: 60 countries make it international law, which might present some challenges. Okay, but I'm assuring you, here in Britain, where I'm based, that dialogue has not happened. It's not happened. Okay,
No,
and
it hasn't. It
indeed.
hasn't happened anywhere.
Indeed. So therefore, this
Yeah.
dialogue, I know, will stimulate many dialogues across the globe. Okay, be assured, be assured. So Bella, I want to thank you
Yeah.
for being a truly inspirational guest. You most certainly stimulated the attention of many, and you've both raised a concern, but also you've also given a clear affirmation of our strength as ordinary people to influence these key decision makers so they operate in the collective, the people's interest, and not the small elite or corporate interest. For that, I applaud you.
Absolutely.
I applaud you. Thank you
Thank you
very
so much, my
much.
brother. Thank you
Have a
for
good
having
day.
me. Yeah.
It's a pleasure. It's
You
a
too, my
pleasure.
brother. Thank you.
Bye
Sure.
bye. Bye bye.
Okay.
There you go. There you are. Wasn't that outstanding? Okay. I say again, the re-edited version of this will contain even more information and references, which will either appear on the screen or part of the commentary linked to this video. The re-edited version will be available within 48 hours, but I'm assuring you it will be truly an inspirational video, an inspirational podcast, one that you must share with your friends, your networks, with your leaders, so that they will at least pause and consider their next decision. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. If in doubt, ask questions. I say again, if in doubt, ask questions. Well said, well said, well said, well said. Now, before I conclude, what I want to do is just make two more announcements. You know, this is the Motivator Show, where we translate words into actions, and a lot's been said about other people. Now we want to focus on those local issues here in Britain, which are of significance. Okay, I want to now, first of all, refer to an ongoing scandal here in Britain called the Windrush scandal, which refers to a boat, but nevertheless is actually referring to an era in British history. Under the 1948 Act, any person born within the British Empire, or so-called Commonwealth these days, had a right to British citizenship. In other words, whether you be born in Jamaica or Nigeria. Okay, if you were born during the period of that Act's enforcement, okay, you had right to British citizenship. In fact, right up until 1972, okay, even though many countries became so-called independent, okay, you had a right to abode here in Britain. And there are tens of thousands of people who took that opportunity because they're encouraged by Britain to enable Britain to recover following the two world wars. Disgustingly, there are still hundreds of thousands of people who have found themselves almost stateless and who need support. I want to give a big shout out to those who are affected by the Windrush scandal. I wish to encourage you to seek out professional advice, legal advice. And I'll put this on the screen. There you go. So the Legal Advice Clinic is based in 58 Bank Street in the West Midlands here in Britain. Email address, it's info@windrushlegaladviceclinic.com. Telephone number during office hours, it's 01 if you're in the UK, it's +44 if you're external, 1902 382 542. I encourage you all to seek out and obtain the legal support that you amply deserve. And of course, you'll also recall a guest I had here by the name of Anthony Brown, who's promoting the Windrush Act, which will enshrine in law the right of those who've been treated in this horrible manner. If you wish to join the campaign for the Windrush Act to protect the interests of those who came here legally, but then found themselves stateless as a result of changes to the laws or Parliament Acts, I encourage you to join with the Windrush Act campaign. Contact www.wdlegal.co.uk, led by Anthony Brown. He's been here on a number of occasions. I encourage you to join that campaign. And lastly, I think today's show has really sort of summarized why it's so important for you all to pay close attention. Now, first of all, if you haven't subscribed, if you haven't at least give us a comment or expressed a like, please do so before you leave. Please. It greatly help us and most certainly tell the YouTube algorithms that this is a podcast worthy of recommending to the hundreds of millions of people who are already YouTube watchers and viewers. Okay, that would help us. But my main point is this: before I close, is what am I'm going to say now. This is a genius international journalist. Her name is Ndidi Iwechu. Okay, one of her articles included this statement, which accord with the fundamentals, the philosophy of the Motivator Show. And watch and read this. It says this: Given the state of Nigeria, yes, she's Nigerian, but Africa, or indeed the world, I think people haven't yet made the mental link that they are responsible for the kind of existence they hand over to their children. Powerful statement. In other words, we are the change makers. Yeah, we determine the quality of life of our children, indeed our children's children. So we cannot stand by and watch the world go by. We've got to be active actors, participants in shaping and framing future dialogues, future societies, so it meets the goal of the majority. Yeah, is that reasonable? Whole purpose of these shows is we translate words into action, because ultimately success is ours for the taking. If in doubt, ask questions. Ask questions. But I hope you found this podcast helpful, insightful. I hope you feel, with the information shared, empowered, not simply to sit there and receive passively, but to act, because you're thinking about your children's children. Your health is indeed your highest wealth. You heard the professor speaking. Yeah, those words are profound. Yeah, his words are profound. But if in doubt, please, I say again, ask questions. Ask questions. But we will continue to provide inspired podcasts. Podcasts that both informs, empowers. Yeah, podcasts that lifts you up. Podcast that empowers you to make decisions with confidence. Praise Jah, Rastafari. So here we are. Until the next strong, I remain the motivator. Traditional African medicine versus the World Health Organization 2025 Pandemic Treaty. Signed by 124 nations. There were 12 nations that abstained. Abstentions were received from Bulgaria, Egypt, Italy, Iran, Israel, and the island of Jamaica. Abstentions also from the Netherlands, Paraguay, Poland, Russia, Slovakia, and United States of America. Traditional African medicine versus the World Health Organization 2025 Pandemic Treaty. Its key provisions include equitable access to health products. Countries must ensure fair distribution of pandemic-related health tools such as vaccines. 20% of such products must be allocated to the WHO for global public health needs. Pathogen access and benefit sharing or PABS systems. Nations agree to share genetic data or pathogen quickly and transparently. In return, they gain fair access to vaccine, treatments, and diagnostic development from that data. Strengthen global coordination. Countries commit to timely reporting and data sharing during health threats. Who will act as a central hub for pandemic intelligence and coordination? Support for low and middle income countries. High income nations must assist low income nations with funding, supplies and training. This includes building lab capacity and healthcare infrastructure. Pandemic preparedness reviews. Nations must regularly evaluate and report their readiness for pandemics. Peer review mechanism will assess progress and guide improvements. Legal and ethical commitments. Countries agree to uphold human rights during public health emergencies. Measures like lockdown and surveillance must be proportionate and lawful. Ubuntu. The African philosophical imperative of Ubuntu, often encapsulated in the phrase, I am because we are. We are because I am. Articulates a profound relational worldview in which human identity, well-being and destiny are deeply interwoven with that of the broader community, the natural environment and the spiritual realm. Ubuntu is not merely a cultural idiom, it's a comprehensive philosophical, ethical and social framework that has guided African societies for centuries in understanding life, relationship, responsibilities and healing. Ubuntu offers a holistic approach to health that contrasts with Western biomedical models by emphasizing balance across physical, emotional, communal, environmental and spiritual dimensions. It sees illness not merely as a physical issue, but as a disruption of social or spiritual harmony, requiring communal restorative healing processes. Rooted in interconnectedness, Ubuntu teaches that individual well-being is inseparable from the well-being of others, demanding that public health address inequalities, exclusion, and cultural alienation. Embedded Ubuntu in the pandemic treaty is not just a cultural inclusion, it's a strategic and ethical imperative. It affirms African dignity and knowledge, promotes equality, supports collaborative international health governance, and values traditional healing systems. Ignoring Ubuntu risks perpetrating a fragmented and unjust global health order, whilst embracing it offers a path to a more humane, inclusive, sustainable future. Traditional African medicine versus the World Health Organization 2025 Pandemic Treaty. We need to translate our words into action because success is ours for the taking.